Okay, so we are going to go over how to solve any quadratic, basically. We technically haven't learned all of the methods, but we've learned enough that you should be able to solve any quadratic that you come across. So this is just a review of a few different sections, putting it all together. Okay, so we have learned, first of all, what is a quadratic? Anybody? What's quadratic? It's an equation that has what? An x squared in it, okay? So usually they're in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, or we can get them in that form. But the big deal is quadratics have to have an x squared. If it doesn't have the highest degree to be x squared, then it is not a quadratic, okay? So how many answers does a quadratic have? Every time it has 2 answers, no matter what. If you only found 1 answer, you missed half your problem. So there's always 2 answers here. In this class, we have gone over 3 different ways to solve a quadratic. What are our options here? You can solve by factoring, quadratic formula, and then we learned the other one last Friday. Yep, solving using square roots. Okay, so which one of these always works no matter what? Not factoring, quadratic formula, thank you. Quadratic formula always works no matter what 100% of the time. Not very fun necessarily, but it works for sure every time. Factoring is the one that works the next most often, and lots of times, depending on the problem, it is one of the easier ways or faster ways to solve. Your last option is square roots. So we can solve using square roots. It doesn't happen very often though. What kind of problem is it that we use square roots to solve? It's where you only have that x squared. You don't have this bx term, remember? So this is when you have no bx term, or when b equals 0. So that doesn't happen very often. I would say about 25% of the time. But when it does happen, it's the fastest way to solve that way. Okay, so today I'm just giving you problems and we're solving them. Technically, could you use quadratic formula for every single problem? Yeah, you can solve every single problem with quadratic formula. Is it very quick and efficient? No, I don't think so. You may really like quadratic formula. If you do, have at it. Like, live your best life with quadratic formula. I'm not going to do every single problem with quadratic formula, but it is not incorrect to do it that way. It just might not be the fastest and most efficient way to do it. Okay, so let's solve this first problem. We have 8 problems we're doing today. 5x squared minus 2x equals 7. And the directions for all of these are just solve. For every one of these problems, or most of these problems, you have to make them equal 0. Square roots, you don't have to make it equal 0, but for factoring quadratic formula, the equation has to equal 0. Does this equation equal 0 right now? No, so let's make it equal 0. Subtract 7 from both sides. And I get 5x squared minus 2x minus 7 equals 0. Is this a square root problem? No, because I have 2x in the middle. I cannot solve this using square roots. So my options are quadratic formula or factoring. Which one you want to do? You tell me, I'll do whatever. Quadratic formula. For this one, when a isn't 1, I would say it takes the same amount of time to factor as it does quadratic formula. Okay, so let's practice quadratic formula this time, and there will be another option for factoring. Yeah, I'll make sure there's another option for factoring. Okay, so we're going to do quadratic formula here. So my a value is 5. B is -2, C is -7. So let's plug that in the quadratic formula. Quadratic formula is -b plus or minus. So -b would be the opposite of -2. Change the sign, so +2 plus or minus the square root of b squared. So -2 squared minus 4 times a, which is 5, times c, which is -7, all divided by 2 times a, 2 times 5. Take a second and simplify that number under the square root. Okay, so when you simplify that number into the square root, you get 4 plus 140, which is 144. So this becomes 2 plus or minus the square root of 144 divided by 5 times 2 is 10. What's the square root of 144? 12. So this becomes 2 plus or minus 12 divided by 10. Square root goes away because we took the square root. And that's two different problems, right? One of them is 2 plus 12 divided by 10. The other is 2 minus 12 divided by 10. 2 plus 12 divided by 10. What's 2 plus 12? 14. And 14 divided by 10 reduces to 7 over 5. Two minus 12 is -10. -10 divided by 10 is -1. So there's your two answers. Okay, I'm going to do that same problem. I'm going to go ahead and factor it just to go over factoring because it's been a few days since we've done that problem or done a factoring problem. So I'm going to take the same problem and factor it. 5x squared minus 2x minus 7 equals 0. To factor this, you have to use the AC method. Again, your A value is still 5. B is -2. C is -7. A times C is 5 times -7, which is -35. Things that multiply to give us 35 is 1 and 35, 5 times 7. To be -2, it's going to be 5 and 7. Which one's going to be a negative, the 5 or the 7? The 7, right? Because it needs to be a -2. So that's the numbers we're putting back in our problem over here. Positive 5x, -7x. So I get 5x squared plus 5x minus 7x minus 7. Factor that by grouping. What can you take out of the first two? X. Left over is, how about a 5x? Right? Left over is x plus 1. For the second two, you can take out a -7. Left over is x plus 1. And now you can pull out an x plus 1. Left over is 5x minus 7. And how do I solve to get my two answers here? Set them equal to 0. So x plus 1 equals 0. 5x minus 7 equals 0 and solve. Subtract 1 and we get -1 for an answer. Add 7 You get 5x equals 7. Divide by 5. So 7/5. Same answer, 2 ways to solve that one. Okay, let's do another one. What about if your problem was x squared minus x plus 8 equals 0? Okay, so what do you want to do here? Well, first of all, can we solve this using square roots? Nope. So it's either factoring or quadratic formula. What do you want to do here? Okay, let's try to factor. So a value is 1. That's a shortcut problem. So a is 1. B is -2. Nope. -1. C is 8. So I'm going to do a times c, which is 1 times 8, which is 8. Factors of 8 are 1 and 8, 2 and 4. Which one's going to give us -1 when we add it together? None of them, right? That means this doesn't factor. Okay, so if it doesn't factor, you're going to get to this point and there's not going to be two numbers that add together to give you -1. So this is not a factorable problem. This is part of the 20% of the problems that don't factor. Okay, so if it doesn't factor, what do we have to do? Quadratic formula. The nice thing about trying to factor first is we didn't do that much extra work here, right? Like quadratic formula, we still write a, b, and c. So let's put it in the quadratic formula. So -b is +1 plus or minus the square root of -1 squared minus 4 times my a value is 1, my c value is 8, all divided by 2 times 1. Work it out to get that number on the inside. -1 squared is +1. -4 times 1 times 8 is -32. So 1 minus 32. 1 minus 32 is -31. So this problem becomes 1 plus or minus the square root of -31 divided by 2. Can I take the square root of -31? No. Can I pull something out? Yeah, pull out the negative. How does it come out? As an I. So my answer is 1 plus or minus I times the square root of 31 divided by 2. Questions about that? Okay, look at the next one. If I had x plus 1 in parentheses squared equals 10. Which method am I going to use to solve this one? The square roots. If you have it in parentheses squared, can't we just take the square root of both sides? Don't forget your plus or minus, right? So this is using square roots. So what's the square root of x plus 1 squared? Just x plus 1 equals plus or minus. Can I take the square root of 10? Can I break it down and take anything out? If you break it down, you get 2 times 5. Are there any pairs to take out? No, there's no pairs to take out. So it's just x plus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 10. How do I solve for x? Subtract 1 from both sides, and you put it up in front of the plus or minus. So x equals -1 plus or minus the square root of 10. And that's your answer. Questions about that? Okay, look at this one. X squared minus 6x equals -2. You try this one. Make sure you make it equal 0 first. I'll give you a couple minutes to get your answer here. Okay, so when you move the 2 over, you get x squared minus 6x plus 2. If you tried to factor it, nope, see, goodness. If you did a times c is 2, the only thing that's multiplied to give me 2 is 1 and 2. Can I get 6 whenever I add those together? So it's not factorable, it's a quadratic formula problem. So plug it in the quadratic formula. When you do that, the number on the inside, 6 squared is 36. 4 times 1 times 2 is 8. So 36 minus 8 is 28, right? I get 6 plus or minus the square root of 28 divided by 2. Can I take the square root of 28? No. Will it break down? Yeah, it will break down. 7 and 4. 4 is 2 and 2. So this is like 2 times 2 times 7. Do we have any pairs to take out? A pair of 2s is going to come on the outside. So I get 6 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 7 divided by 2. The 3 numbers on the outside, do they all divide by something? Yeah, they all divide by 2. What's 6 divided by 2? 3. Plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is 1. So it's just the square root of 7. Divided by, what's 2 divided by 2? 1. Do you really need to put it divided by 1? No, so your answer is just 3 plus or minus the square root of 7. Questions about that one? Okay, look at this one. We had 3x squared plus 36 equals 0. What's the best way to solve this one? square roots. If you have the option to do square roots, that's a lot faster than quadratic formula or factoring. To solve using square roots, you're solving for x. What's the first thing I'm going to move over here? The 36. Subtract 36 from both sides. And we get 3x squared equals 0 minus 36 is negative 36. What's your next step for solving for x? Divide by 3. And so I get x squared equals negative 36 divided by 3 is negative 12. Okay, so now what am I going to do to solve for x? Square root both sides. Don't forget your plus or minus. So I get x equals, let's see, the square root of negative 12. I can break down 12 to 3 times 4, which is 3 times 2 times 2. So this is like negative 1 times 2 times 2 times 3. What's going to come out? The pair of 2's is going to come out. What else? An I. The negative 1 comes out as an I. So on the outside is going to be 2i times the square root of 3 is left over on the inside, plus or minus. And that's your answer. Questions about that? Okay, try this on your own. X squared minus 2x minus 15 equals 0. Choose a method and solve that one. What's the best way to solve this one? It's easiest to factor this one. You can also use quadratic formula. You will get your answer still. I just don't think it's the fastest way to do this one, especially since A is 1. This is a shortcut problem, right? A times C is 1 times negative 15. Factors of negative 15 are 1 and 15, 3 and 5. How do I get negative 2 out of that? Yeah, make the 5 negative. 3 plus negative 5 is negative 2. So my factors are x plus 3 times x minus 5 equals 0. How do I solve for x? Set the factors equal to 0 and solve. So x plus 3 equals 0. X minus 5 equals 0. Subtract 3. I get negative 3. Add 5. And I get positive 5. So negative 3 and positive 5. Questions about that? Okay, let's do another one. We're going to do 2 more. Try this one. 8x squared minus 2x equals 7. Okay, for this one, you have to move the 7 first. So you get 8x squared minus 2x minus 7 equals 0. So our a value is 8, b is negative 2, c is negative 7. If you tried to do factoring, does this factor? Or didn't even try? It actually doesn't factor. The 2, when you do 8 times negative 7, you get negative 56. And we can't get the number 2 out of that when we do that. So quadratic formula is your only option here. So when I plug it in quadratic formula, it's going to be 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared minus 4 times 8 times negative 7, all divided by 2 times your a value of 8. Okay, so negative 2 squared is positive 4. Negative 4 times 8 times negative 7 is a big old number. What is it? 224. I think it should be positive 224. So it's going to be plus 224. That right there, I know this is like the most mistakes happen right there on the inside. If you do it in your head or work it out, like type that whole thing in your calculator and double check it, because it's so frustrating to do it and get all the way down to the end. You got the answer wrong just because you got that number wrong. Okay, so we're going to get 2 plus or minus the square root of 228, all divided by 16. Is that what you got? So then from there, I need to simplify square root of 228. It does not, you can't take the square root of it, but it does break down. Let's see, it's 2 and 1 16, and that's 2 and 58. 58 is 2 and 29. What you got? I'm doing this in my head. Sleepy this morning. Okay, so 3 2s and a 29. So this is like 2 times 2 times 2 times 29. What can you take out? A set of 2's comes out. So I get 2 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 2 times 29 on the inside would be 58, all divided by 16. And then from there, I can simplify all my outside numbers to divide by the same number. What do they all divide by? 2, right? So this becomes 1 plus or minus 1 times the square root of 58, or just the square root of 58, over 16 divided by 2 is 8. And that's your answer. Questions about that? Okay, last problem. This is going to be a quiz grade. When you turn it in, if you get it wrong, I'm gonna send you back to I'm gonna show you what you did wrong and send you back, make you work on it, because we have 15 minutes to do this problem. Once you get it right, you get 100 for quiz, or for a quiz grade. And your problem is 3x squared minus 13x equals 10. And you've got options here on what you want to do. Doesn't matter how you solve it. If you're on Zoom, you need to turn your camera on and show it to me, and that'll give you your quiz grade.